President, Mrs. Reagan, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm touched by your cordial welcome and the warm words with which you and Mrs. Reagan have received us here in Washington. We're equally honored by the generous remarks you, Mr. President, have just made about my country and people. Seen from Washington, Nepal is almost on the other side of the globe, and yet, as this friendly gathering here tonight shows, distance notwithstanding, friendship and cordiality based on shared ideals can exist between countries that are geographically far apart. In 1947, as soon as Nepal broke her age-old isolation by seeking friendship beyond her borders, it was with the United States of America that Nepal sought to establish her diplomatic relations. Since 1951, the year when my grandfather, late King Thiruvan, led the Nepalese people to democracy, we have looked to the United States as a land of freedom and fulfillment. The enduring ideals of the founding fathers of America, who spoke to men of liberty and independence, have inspired men throughout the world, including those of us living in the mountain fastness of Nepal. In our part of the world, if America is looked upon as a land of gold, grain, and computers, a country of skyscrapers and space shuttle, she is also regarded as a nation committed to respect man and his dignity. A land of discovery, America has distinguished herself in being inventive, in breaking new grounds, and opening newer horizons of knowledge for the betterment of man. With a country such as the United States, one wonders if Nepal has anything in common. On the surface, there may seem very little. Yet, as men living in the same planet, we have common stakes in the global peace, prosperity, and indeed, the survival of man in dignity and freedom. We are happy to see, Mr. President, your efforts to maintain peace and stability around the world. The Nepalese people join me in appreciating the understanding with which, on behalf of the people and the government of the United States, you have extended support to the concept of Nepal as a zone of peace. This recognition, I assure you, will go down not only as an important landmark in the history of our relations, but also as a testimony of your personal commitment to the cause of peace, stability, and freedom. Nepal rejoices in the achievements of the American people in different fields of human endeavors. The initiative and enterprise of your people are exemplary. Yet what happens in this part of the world sends its ripples even to the roadless villages of Nepal. We receive their fallout. When America suffers a temporary drought, millions around the world get affected. Indeed, if I may seek your indulgence, I would like to mention something that on the surface may sound trivial, but sometimes it is the small thing that can bring about profound changes. The corn, maize, in Nepal was introduced from this part of America, as were the potatoes from the Andes nearly 300 years ago. These new crops not only altered our hill economy, but even the mode of life by making settlements possible in the mountain terraces of Nepal. Evidently, we do not live in islands, but in a world bound in a nexus of interdependence. What happens in America ceases therefore to be a local event. The United States, as such, has shown a consistent understanding towards this and has assisted Nepal in stretching her hand of friendship and cooperation in many fields, including the building of infrastructures. May I take this opportunity, therefore, to thank you and through you to the people and government of the United States for the support we have received in meeting the challenges of development in Nepal. Mr. President, in recent years, America has brought glory to humanity by landing man on the moon. It is indeed thrilling to reflect that one can soar into space to explore the unknown and scan the stars. Yet these adventures into outer space would carry still deeper meaning if the part of humanity living in Nepal could also rid themselves of their continuing poverty. Herself a least developed, landlocked country, Nepal has always sought understanding and cooperation from our friends and neighbors. In fact, since the time I assumed responsibilities, I have sought that the minimum of basic needs must not be denied to people anywhere in the world. In this regard, I take comfort in the reassurance that the United States will continue to extend cooperation on a long-term basis into the future. Modern technology, Mr. President, has reduced distance and joined us all into a family of nations. This situation demands that we create an enduring relationship based on a sense of purpose and meaning. Were Nepal and countries in her region willing to join hands with the United States and other international agencies in a creative effort for prosperity by putting into use a fragment of their human and capital resources to harness the water potentials of Nepal, it would not only enable them to walk over a long road to progress for our region as a whole, but would also continue to build bridges of understanding between a most advanced and a least developed nation of the world. It would also mean eliminating the perils of hunger on the one hand and the danger of instability and extremism on the other. I have no doubt that Nepal and the United States can cooperate in many fields of creative endeavors. As countries that have shown respect to the uniqueness of the individual, we believe in the conservation of the natural as well as the spiritual heritage of man. But most important of all, we both honor the freedom of man and the independence of nations. In this regard, we appreciate the support the United States has shown consistently to our identity as a nation. Mr. President, I cherish the fruitful exchange of views we have had recently with each other. You have been very reassuring, and I wish to thank you and Mrs. Reagan for the warmth of hospitality shown to me, my wife, and members of my entourage. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may I now request you to join me in proposing a toast to the health and happiness of President Ronald Reagan of the United States of America and the First Lady, Mrs. Nancy Reagan, to the peace and prosperity of the American people, and to the further development of friendship between Nepal and the United States.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Tom Nagoski, for the kind words of introduction. The Honorable Kevin Rudd, former Prime Minister of Australia, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I begin by thanking the Asia Society for having me here today. I am also delighted to have former Prime Minister Rudd with us. Today, I stand before you to share my thoughts on peace, democracy, and development. Nepali people have emerged through various struggles and transformations at different junctures of history. At one point of time, Our forefathers fought against the imperialistic forces, and our sovereignty and independence was preserved by their courage and patriotism. The generation of my parents, who were ordinary peasants, had to fight to free themselves from the clutches of feudalism and oppressive regime. Their struggle uprooted the despotic family rule of Ranas, and my generation had to fight against an autocratic monarchy. This was our final assault on an illiberal and undemocratic regime. Now, the course of Nepal's political history has changed. We are a democratic republic. But our fight is continuing in a different form as a fight against poverty, underdevelopment, and backwardness. In the course of history, our political gains have not come without heavy price. Several competitors made ultimate sacrifice and got martyrdom. Many lived in political exile while others were brutalized and suppressed. I feel a bit emotional when I recall those dark 14 years that I spent in jail, including 4 years of solitary confinement. My crime was that I fought against autocratic regime. But this never deterred, rather emboldened me to continue the struggle. Ladies and gentlemen, as a result of our sustained struggle, democracy was restored in 1990. However, our fight for full-fledged democracy continued. We had never relented in our efforts, nor was there any complacence towards our ultimate goal of progressive democratic republic. An armed conflict that began in 1996 was successfully resolved through a peace accord signed in November 2006. Key to this process was the famous 12-point understanding forged in November 2005. I was among those who played an important role in forging consensus to advance this process and bring the rebellion force to a negotiating table. This brought the seven-party political alliance and the rebellion force together to mount a combined people's movement against an absolute monarch who had snatched people's rights through unconstitutional means. The ensuing result forced the monarch to capitulate. The armed conflict ended and peace process began. The restored parliament clipped the wings of the ruling monarchy and suspended it until it was finally abolished 2 years later by a democratically elected Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly was highly inclusive, having representation from all gender, caste, tribal and linguistic groups, faith communities, cultures, geographical length and breadth of the country. Dear friends, after 7 years of consultations and deliberations, arguments and debates, demands and pressures, peaceful agitation and campaigning, a highly progressive and democratic constitution was finally written for the first time by people's representatives. As a leader of the second largest political party of that time, I had an important responsibility to steer the process to a successful conclusion. Finally, the Constitution was promulgated on 20th September 2005. 15. It has finally settled the political issue that the country confronted for a long period of time. This was a watershed moment in the political history of modern Nepal. I believe that the future generations may not have to go through the similar course of struggle for rights and freedoms anymore. Through the Constitution, we consolidated democratic polity, republican order, periodic elections, universally recognized human rights, separation of power with checks and balances, rules of law, independent judiciary, and inclusive and proportional representation system. Implementation of the Constitution is as much important as its promulgation. I had the privilege of serving the nation as the first Prime Minister under the new Constitution. I was thus incumbent upon my government to take decisive steps to implement the Constitution as per the roadmap it has provided. The Constitution came into full implementation after free and fair democratic elections held last year for the federal, provincial, and local levels. With a historical electoral turnout, the elections resulted in 41% of women's representation and formation of stable and democratic governments at all three tiers of the federation. The government I had enjoys 3/4 support of the parliament. The policies and programs of my government were unanimously endorsed by the parliament and exercised seen rarely in the competitive democracy. This proves that the fellow Nepalis repose trust in our leadership and our ability to deliver. Dear friends, we steered a successful peace process through inclusive political dialogue and deliberations and a spirit of accommodations. Ours was a homegrown, nationally led and owned peace process. In the process, we managed to reconcile competing demands and aspirations of our diverse population. We ensured equal participation of all stakeholders and heard their voices. We recognized the important role of women in conflict resolution and peace process. We transformed state structures and institutions to mirror the mosaic of our society, and we brought the government closer to the people through restructuring of the state. The major thrust of the peace process has been to promote reconciliation in society, healing the wounds of conflict period. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a clear vision for the development of the country. I am aware of our strengths, challenges, and limitations. To sustain the political gains and deliver on the development dividend to our people, my government has set a long-term goal of prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali. To realize this goal, we must eradicate poverty, eliminate inequality and discrimination, create employment opportunities, ensure social justice, promote good governance, and ensure effective service delivery. Our aim is to attain a comprehensive democracy that empowers individuals in all spheres of national life, political, economic, social, and cultural. I have a conviction that full realization of SDGs makes this possible. Nepal is a resource-rich country, but the level of development is well below our potentials. This mismatch must come to an end sooner than later. We have identified the drivers of economic growth. Drivers of economic growth. These include no other vital sectors than agriculture, energy, industries, transport, infrastructure, information technology, tourism, and urban development. For making economic progress, sustainable parallel attention will be given to the climate change mitigation, adaptation, and preservation of biodiversity. Nepal is safe for foreign investment. The government remains committed to further improving business and investment climate in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me turn briefly to Nepal's foreign policy priorities. Nepal is the oldest independent state in our region, with her own distinguished and glorious history. Amity with all and enmity with none remains at the heart of Nepal's foreign policy. This is inspired by the principles of UN Charter, Panchashil, non-alignment, international law, and norms of world peace. We enjoy cordial and friendly relations with both our immediate neighbors, India and China. Economic growth and prosperity in neighborhood offers us a promising prospect for the development of our country. Our relations with major powers and development partners have been all along cordial and friendly. We would like to further develop and expand our cooperative partnership with them. Extended neighborhood and labor destination countries are also in our foreign policy priority. Nepal has been playing an active role for the promotion of regional cooperation under SAARC and BIMSTEC. On multilateral front, Nepal's effort will be directed towards promoting a rule-based, just and equitable international order in which all states, small and big, fulfill their international obligations in good faith and all countries enjoy equitable opportunities to fulfill aspirations for development and prosperity. Before I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to state that Nepal's commitment to democracy and fundamental freedoms is total and unflinching. The long journey of our political struggle is synonymous to the struggle for democracy. We will not allow any compromise on democratic norms, values, and principles. We believe that democracy, development, and respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms are interdependent and mutually reinforcing. With these words, I conclude my remarks. I would be delighted to engage with you all in the interactive discussion. Thank you so much.
Please take the seat, Prime Minister.